Hi, I'm Keon, a senior research analyst with Lipper. I'm here to speak to you about fund flows activity for the week ended Wednesday, August 28th. Let's start this week's report by taking a quick look at the market activity. The NASDAQ Composite Index, S&P 500 Index, and Dow Jones Industrial Average all lost ground during the fund flows trading week as the indices continue to be weighed down by the trade war between the U.S. and China. Each index lost about 3% on Friday, August 23rd, when China announced new tariffs on U.S. goods, and President Trump retaliated by advising U.S. companies to stop doing business in and with China. Cooler heads prevailed on Monday as each side extended olive branches and stated that they thought a trade deal was still possible. The markets reacted in kind, with each index posting gains of greater than 1% for the day. Let's turn our attention back now to the fund flows activity. We'll start by taking a quick look at the week's, for our macro groups, results for the week. Equity mutual funds suffered net outflows of $5 billion for the week. Muni bond funds and taxable bond funds took in about $1.2 billion and $585 million for the week, while money market funds had the largest net outflow for the week at $16.2 billion. We'll now explore the changes in each one of these asset groups a little more closely, and we're starting with our equity mutual fund group. The $5 billion net negative flow for the group was its 28th straight weekly net outflow. Both domestic equity funds and non-domestic equity funds contributed to this outflow, as domestic saw $3.1 billion leave and non-domestic had $1.9 billion leave. The largest net outflows among the equity peer groups belong to emerging markets funds and large cap core funds, which saw roughly $490 million and $420 million leave respectively. Let's move on to our equity ETF group now. This asset group also had net outflows, about $2.3 billion for the week, with the largest individual net outflows belonging to the Industrial Select Sector SPDR ETF and the iShares Core S&P 500 ETF, which saw roughly $825 million and $810 million leave respectively. Conversely, in a safe haven play, the SPDR Gold ETF took in about $1.5 billion in net new money. We'll turn our attention now to the taxable bond fund groups. We'll start with the mutual fund side of the ledger. This group had net inflows of $585 million for the week, its 10th net inflow in the last 11 weeks. In what is becoming a trend as of late, the core plus bond funds and core bond funds peer group paced the net inflows at $1 billion and $509 million respectively. We'll move on to our taxable bond ETF group now. This group had net inflows also last week. They took in roughly $4.4 billion in net new money. The largest individual net inflows belong to the Schwab US TIPS ETF and the iShares US Treasury Bond ETF, which had positive net flows of $969 million and $680 million respectively. The largest net outflow belonged to the Wisdom Tree Floating Rate Treasury product, which saw about $841 million leave their coffers. Let's turn our attention now to the Muni Bond Fund Group, which extended its net inflow streak to 34 weeks this week. The asset group had positive net flows of $1.2 billion. The net inflows were once again concentrated within the national muni peer groups, with general muni debt funds and high yield muni debt funds leading the way with net inflows of $415 million and $398 million respectively. Our last group to take a look at is money market funds. As we spoke about earlier, money market funds had a large net outflow this week, about $16.2 billion. It was the first net outflow in the last 4 weeks. The net negative flows were driven by funds in the institutional U.S. Treasury money market funds and institutional U.S. government money market funds peer groups, which saw about $7.1 billion and $6.5 billion leave respectively. On the plus side of things, money market instrument funds took in $2.5 billion in net new money last week. Well, that wraps up this week's report. If you'd like to take a close look at the data for yourself, please go to our website, which is www.lipperusfundflows.com. And please join us here again next week, where another one of our analysts will be speaking about the fund flows activity.